Welcome, everybody, to LPM Tiger Team, the third in this series in partnership with our friends at NetDocuments. I'm Richard Brent. I am the head of content here at Burlington Media Group, which includes the LPM brand. And if you're joining us on Tiger Team, hopefully you're familiar with LPM, the leading publication for SME legal. But if you're joining us new to Tiger Team, what is it? Well, quite simply, it is a format that brings together people to solve a common challenge, but not just any people, very specifically people with a diverse range of perspectives, and potentially backgrounds as well. So in the case of LPM, LPM Tiger Team, that means people from different types of law firm and with different roles. And the challenge that they are all taking on today is improving the client experience. I'd say this is the third in this series. We previously tackled how to get the maximum out of your core business systems. A couple of months ago, we looked at closing the automation gap. How can you get more value out of automation projects? And this time, it's all about improving the client experience. And as I say, we have people from different law firms joining us to discuss this issue, and I'm going to facilitate them in doing so. Hopefully, come up with a few solutions in the process. So let me introduce you to Peter Ambrose, and Peter is the owner and MD of the partnership. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. We've also got Richard Price. Richard is a finance and IT manager at Maurice Turnor Gardner. Hi, Richard.
Hello there.
And looking very exotic there, Richard. And no less so, Jill Schornack, who is VP of Product at NetDocuments. Hi, Jill.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
And we do have a fourth tiger, Gemma Garren, who is Director of Risk and Compliance at Tees Law, and hopefully Gemma will be able to join us shortly to offer a perspective on this issue. So kicking off, I think, with any problem-solving exercise, probably best to define the problem itself. Client experience. I mean, law firms obviously have a lot of clients; they always have done. That's no bad thing. So what's the problem? Well, are clients' expectations of your service, of what you do for them, changing? Maybe I can start with Peter on that one.
I think it's safe to say that we've seen a huge change since the end of the pandemic. It was always getting worse in terms of expectations and the impossibility of trying to manage them. But certainly in the last 18 months, it's gone through the roof. And we think it's just a general shift in behavior, whereby this idea of instant gratification, we need an answer now, we'll send a message, then an hour later we'll call up and say, well, did you get it? And I think the reality is the genie's out the bottle. We always look forward as to if you can extrapolate the current situation and say, is it going to get any worse? It has to reach a crossing point, because it is certainly very, very difficult to manage expectations. We try and address it by giving people more information. The problem with that, of course, the more information you give them, the more they'll take. And I think without doubt, us, like any other service provider, is coming under much closer scrutiny from consumers.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks, Peter. I should have said to those watching, do feel free to use the Q&A as we get into the discussion. If you'd like to, you can ask questions, or indeed give us your own takes on the issues we're covering. I also should say this session is being recorded. Richard, how about you? What's the perspective from Maurice Turnor Gardner?
Yeah, it's the same as Peter, really. I think with technology going the way it is, it's just taking over people's lives. Everybody out there wants to use all this new technology for dealing with their law firm and not just their own personal interactions. So we're having to start looking at every single bit of communication software out there it's no longer just done by post or email. There's so many different ways of communicating, and that's that's what the clients want. So we have to adapt for them.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
very much about the speed of communication, isn't it? And that's why they're using these instant messaging platforms, that they want instant messages. They don't want to wait for it to go through email and someone to deal with it when they get to it. They want an instant answer.
Instant answers. And Jill, does this factor into NetDocuments thinking? I mean, you're all about collaboration. How are you seeing your clients impacting what you're considering for them?
Yeah, very, very consistent to what we've heard already, right? Like clients' expectations are of course ever increasing, but I think at different paces, right? So there are legal organizations who want to serve the broader market, and they have to figure out how to meet those varying expectations. Like some said, some people want to have self-service portals and they want rapid answers. Others want, white glove service that really can only be delivered if the lawyer can minimize that time spent on administrative tasks and things like that. So, how do you do that? How do you serve such a varying, degree of client expectations? And my humble opinion is a little help from technology. As Richard says, it's taking over, but in a good way.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, and when we did our annual research, LPM Frontiers, actually the reason that we've settled on this topic is because out of a list of a whole range of potential strategic drivers, improving client experience came top in the response list, above sort of eight or so other ones, just above, in fact, creating a more sort of agile, digital first mindset. So I think those two probably do go hand in hand. So what about then the role for technology, more specifically the role for technology in facilitating these, responding to these new patterns in demand? Peter, what has your firm as a specialist in technology looked at doing?
100%. We've always said that the only solution to service delivery is technology, and it's quite interesting. Whenever we publish articles, I do a lot of writing, and immediately the answer I always get back is no, we need better lawyers. And we're like, well, we're running out of better lawyers, so that's a bit of a limited resource. So we've always said what you need is really good technology with really good lawyers, the two to each other. My personal view is I don't see how you can deliver the kind of service that consumers want without exploiting technology. I just cannot see it, because there are not enough hours in the day. The volumes of communications are so high. I think that anyone that thinks you can deliver service without technology they are kidding themselves. They really are. The problem is understanding what is useful technology and what can actually help them, as opposed to what appears to be the panacea or the answer. So I'll give you an example. One of the problems we had is that our clients were having their money stolen from them, which is never a good look for a law firm. And the reason why they were having their money stolen was because people were spoofing emails, pretending to come from us. So we got rid of all emails about 7 years ago. We had no visibility of what was going on, but suddenly the clients would call up and go, I've received this email and I've now lost all my money. So we realized we had to stop that. So we stopped that by having a portal. So they had secure access, and that was great. But then we were still getting emails from lawyers. We were still getting emails from estate agents. We were also getting people calling in as well. So what we found is we had all these different channels of communication. And suddenly we were sitting there going, well, where's it come from? Was it an email? And the lawyers were spending time trying to find out where it came from. So then we had to build another bit of technology over the top of it that we call our message center, this was one place where they could look, they could see all their communications in one place. And we had to do that because we were getting so much communication and from so many channels that we had to manage it. And I think the problem for most law firms is that, we have the ability to build that technology, but there's very few unifying technologies out there that can help them with this. And I think that's the problem. You can open up your channels, but managing it is an absolute nightmare from our experience.
And I think you're also doing some exploratory work and the potential for artificial intelligence, aren't you, Peter? Is that right?
Artificial intelligence is the future for all lawyers. We know this, right? And it's going to get rid of all jobs. So yeah, crack on. That's what I say. No, we are doing some work with AI. You've got to be very careful. There's a lot of misunderstandings. We've been working on this since January. AI is really good for interpreting advice that you've already given, legal advice, maybe putting it in a format that clients can understand with the caveat that it's backed up by that legal advice. We cannot see at the moment AI in terms of giving legal advice because the risks are too huge and there's liability issues and all this kind of, and it's fundamentally a statistical engine, not factual. However, where we are using it is in software development. And the results there are truly terrifying. And if you want to see what you can do with this stuff so fast, try it with software development. It's unbelievable. And there we are seeing we can roll out solutions far more quickly. But that's very, very different. That's in the software development world as opposed to the legal advice world, where we remain skeptical about what it can really do right now, because you can't give legal advice based on a statistical number.
Okay. Is that what you're hearing as well, Jill? What are you hearing? I know NetDocuments will be will have a firm eye on the developments in generative AI and large language models.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been hearing the same kinds of concerns, right, about AI, like, oh my gosh, it's magic, it's amazing, but be really careful because, you know, it can get you into loads of trouble. And so I think that's the way that we're thinking about AI is, you know, technology, it has matured to a point of incredible power. It helps us reimagine how legal workflows, you know, look and feel and how, you know, certain legal work is done, but it needs to be paired with security, right, to make that possible. That's a really, really important thing, like being able to leverage your own, you know, best practices and your own precedent, not just kind of the general, you know, public, you know, forum of data, right? Or, you know, being able to profile your documents in a way that, you know, is consistent with the way that, you know, you want your law firm to classify things. It's just a really important, you know, match between you know, broadly available technology and how you're going to deploy it in your organization in a very secure but also effective way, right?
Yeah. You said you know, you're skeptical about its use in legal advice, but what about, to what extent do any of you think that it could contribute to this idea of you know, how to meet clients' expectations, and does it factor into the client conversation in any ways? Maybe I'll start with Richard first. Don't know if even if you are going down the AI path at all, Richard.
No, we are not going down the AI path at the moment. I can see how it might be useful, as Jill says, from a, you know, NetDocs point of view of filing your documents and filing your emails and making sure that, you know, everything goes in the right location automatically without lawyers having to think about it. But as far as legal advice goes, I really hope not. I can almost see how it would work for very bog standard run of the mill bits of work. As Peter says, it's all statistical. So if it's happened 3 million times before, AI can possibly get it right for you. But what if there's a little quirk in there that AI is just not seen before, as happens so often in law? And certainly for us in the type of work that we do, it's all very bespoke service, and we'll think that most of the stuff that we're doing is fairly unique work. So I don't think AI can assist us there. It needs a really good lawyer at the end of it to look at it.
Yeah, I think that's large. Oh, I'm sorry, Richard.
No, I just overlapped you, but please let me hear from you.
Yeah, no, I was just commenting, right? Like I think that's right. Like I think Peter said it. You know, you need better tech and better lawyers. It's not the role of technology to replace lawyers, but really to kind of support them, enable them to do their best work. And I think what Richard was saying is true, right? Like you need to be able to take the technology and tailor it to what makes you different and special, right? What is the value that you deliver to your clients, and then be able to interweave the two. It can't be just technology, just AI on its own, but being able to leverage the technology to more consistently apply what makes you different, and really maximize that, that client service. That's really, I think, where AI becomes really powerful.
Peter?
It is interesting, as I say, we ran it over we ran some leases through it and so forth, and just to see, just for a bit of a laugh, really. And it is remarkably clever. But I think what we've seen when we look at the work, the actual work that lawyers do, or maybe assistants, I think the bigger area actually is with our legal assistants, where we see them doing an awful lot of moving data around. So whether it's feedback from clients, whether it's feedback from the other side, whether it's checking we've got all the documents there, checking it's all correct. I think for validation, I think there's definitely opportunity there. Someone like, for example, one of my guys, well, we're looking at mailroom, for example, where because we scan every document that comes in, and we know that the solution to that mailroom problem is large language models, 100%. We looked at mailroom solutions in the past, and it was a few years ago now, and they just weren't sophisticated enough to deal with the huge variation in documents that we have to deal with. It's not just invoices. It's like, a case can have 100 different documents, different types that you've never seen before. We do believe that for classification of documents, I'm sure Jill will bear this out, we think there's some really good opportunity for it, because if you misclassify a document, well, it's no real big deal. It's just a bit of a pain. If you read a document and get it wrong, then you've got a liability issue. And everyone's running away from this liability issue as fast as they can. And we know that the buck will stop with us. But I think certainly where we've seen it is the ability to be able to say, we think we've got this document, have we got it? And then when we have got it, say to the lawyer, this is a lease, or this is a declaration of trust, or this is it doesn't matter what it is, this is a mortgage offer. Even trying to understand mortgage offers is difficult. And so we think if we can at least work out what documents we're dealing with, then we can shortcut it, because right now that's a manual process.
Yeah.
Are you saying just to basically tag the documents in to say, it comes into mailroom, and your AI is going to look at it and go, that's a lease, that's a mortgage offer, that's X document. So when the lawyer then wants to find it, it's labeled and it's there and easy to find.
Exactly. Well, this is what we're doing at the moment, only we're doing it manually, because also different. So, we try, I'd say we looked at some mailroom solutions, and they were really good at like reading invoices and that's great and all that. But we were like, yeah, but we'll get a deed of substitute security or something. We go, well, and it's different than that one. That's from Lloyd's and that's from Halifax and so forth. So that's where
the learning aspect of AI comes in, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that the more you put through it, the better it's going to be.
Yeah. So we've seen discussions around sort of reading leases. In fact, we were advising, there's one company that does using AI for reading leases. We put a bit of time into it, and we've decided just to back off from that right now, because it's just such a horribly complicated problem. And 80% is sort of great, but sort of isn't. Because one of the worries is, and this is a general worry about technology, is you can over automate. And then what happens is your colleagues then start going, great, that's okay, because the machine said it was okay. So we deliberately put in things where the machine doesn't do stuff. So we use a lot of tasks, we use a lot of automation, but a lot of the stuff we make people do it manually. And I think this is overlooked. You cannot automate everything, because as soon as you do, it's not going to catch the mistakes.
Yeah, you have to find the right use cases, don't you? And I think profiling is one of those really great examples, because like you said, Peter, like it's done manually very often. And when you do something manually, it opens room up for error, right? Inconsistencies, or path of least resistance, which means that a lot of times it's tagged as a miscellaneous document or just generic document as the type, and that really hinders the experience of even your lawyers. That then hinders the experience of clients, because that metadata is the lifeblood of a document management or knowledge management system. But using something like automation and AI, like as you upload a document to, send that to a prompt to the LLM, be able to classify that document in a consistent way, and then tag it without any kind of intervention from the lawyer, all of a sudden makes that technology so much more powerful, so that they can find that document, that precedent, when they're working with the client, and do so in a way that's consistent, with the best practice of your organization. And that's all, done automatically. And what's really great then is that time that would have been otherwise spent profiling that document is shifted over to that value added work, right? That enhances the client expectation, or enhances the experience.
We spend about 5 hours a day classifying documents. It's ridiculous. I've got two people spending 2.5 hours every day. I've got another two that scan Okay, and we rotate it because that's a dreadful job. So so they scan it. So 2 people scan it, and then 2 other people at the same time classify them. So they'll scan onto the case, or they'll look at the case and go, right, what is it? They'll check it, they'll validate it, and I'd say a minimum 5 hours a day. It's ridiculous. It's and it's so tedious, apart from anything else.
I know. Imagine though, like if you upload a document, right, and you can send that in and get it classified, and not only classified, but if it's a say a purchase agreement or something like that, you could know the other types of information that you would otherwise want to know about a purchase agreement, like the the effective date or the party or whatever it is, and send those sub prompts into something like a large language model. Now all of a sudden you've got an enormous amount of information tagged to that document that can fuel that search later in the workflow. So it is a really powerful use case. I agree.
That is, I think, is the key to this stuff. If we're going to look at AI within law, I think the place right now, and certainly for the foreseeable future, is around getting data out of documents so you don't make mistakes. The classic one, we misread a lease or we miss something, and we get the lease length wrong or something like that, and because we can't get the original data. I'll give you another example. We deal with a lot of hassle with land registry with requisitions. And so, and this is causing us real problems because they're being a little bit picky at the moment, and that's fine. But what we need to do is we need to read those requisitions, find out what the heck it is they're looking for. And we've looked at this and gone, can we read these? And we were like, well, it's so variable, the data, that actually that would be quite a good thing to say, I'll read it and we believe it's to do with this. So the good news is you've got the belt and braces of, we know there's a problem that we have to deal with and we need a lawyer to look at it. We're going to get a stab at what we think the problem is. But as long as we can show the original letter and we go, this is what we think is the problem, it saves the lawyer reading everything. But again, there's a risk there because they go, well, you'll miss something. But with something like requisitions, normally, and 99% of the stuff is pretty basic. We haven't got this, we haven't got that. And we just think, rather than having lawyers having to read, which is what we're doing at the moment, we're reading requisitions, and it's just such a waste of time.
Yeah.
Interesting to find out whether you say about AI missing something as they're reading through the requisition. How often does a lawyer miss something as they're reading through a requisition? Because there's a lot of thing, isn't there, about AI? It's like, oh, what if it misses something? What if it does it wrong? Well, how often do you get human error?
It happens. I mean, I would never say it, but yes, lawyers do make mistakes.
Well, of course they do. Yeah, we're human.
Yeah. It's a good point, actually. It's a really good point, actually.
So, where's the percentage of mistakes for a human versus AI, and where does AI take over? Because they're actually more accurate than the human.
They are, yeah.
Yeah. Which can you exert most control over? Let's zoom out a bit again now. Jill, you made the point, and sort of Richard has as well. I suppose that it's not technology or lawyers. Necessarily, and we are talking about client experience in the round, of course. So, and we've got Gemma who's just popped up. Hello, Gemma. You're just in time for a shift in the conversation. We've been talking a lot about use cases for AI and how to assess them, but I now want to move on to talk about which touch points in the client journey, the client experience, client relationships are sort of most pressing for you to tackle, whether that is with technology or otherwise. Maybe I'll start with Richard, give you a chance to settle in, Gemma. It's nice to see you. Thank you for persevering.
The part that we're looking at the moment, or about to start looking at, is the client onboarding. It's the first point of contact with the client, and we need to get that right from the get-go. We all know first impressions count, and we want our onboarding system to be as painless as possible for the client and for the lawyer. Quite happy to admit at the moment that it's probably a very painful process for the lawyers. Not so much for the clients, because we do it all for them, which is very very time consuming. We need to get some sort of system in place that allows the client to fill in a lot of their details and provide their documentation in a very slick and easy manner. if they want to, but also allow clients to go, oh, I don't want to do that. You do that for me, which is what we do. A lot of the time, the clients happily pay extra for our services because we, as you said earlier, we give the white glove treatment. So we'll handhold them through a lot of the processes that other law firms would just pass over to the client and just expect them to get it done.
Does that also go for sort of Peter's earlier sort of point about investment in developing a portal to facilitate more client involvement in
so there's a lot of products out there now about like client onboarding, and they're all about uploading your documents to a portal or something like that, or just an app on the phone that allows you to easily do your biometrics, which gets you past through most of it. Upload your passport or driving license and utility bills, and it's just quick and easy with a phone to scan those documents, and it's all done. But yeah, the other option is to have an actual web portal where users can upload documentation, which strikes me as being the easiest way. I'd like to think a lot of the clients will take that on, and rather than having to scan a document in and then email it across to the lawyer, who can then check it and then do a Zoom or a Teams call to confirm that the passport picture that you've got is definitely you that's on the video that I'm talking to, and confirm it by eye, which is is more time consuming than just going through a biometric scan. Which is what we're trying to achieve, isn't it? Is making it quick and easy, and clients don't want to have a 10-minute video call with a lawyer to confirm they're who they say they are. They just want to scan their face on an iPhone and job done.
Yeah, it's all these handoffs, isn't it, Richard? Like, the client gives information that somebody receives, then has to do something with, and then it goes back for, right? It's the transition periods that can be really lengthy and doesn't lead to those rapid responses, rapid results that everybody is looking for. And it's kind of interesting. Like, imagine if you use that onboarding experience, and you could have that intake form in a portal, right, where the client could enter that information, and instead of just receiving that information and going to include it in the set of documents that are required for that matter type, for example, imagine if that information is stored and just reused to auto-generate those documents, so that you don't have to go through that friction of receiving and doing, but it actually kind of just starts to flow through. It's those types of
classic process, isn't there? Of your lawyer has a phone call with a client who takes down their name and address, and then they'll put that onto a form. That's one error made. Then it goes to another department who then inputs it into the system, and there's another error made, and then eventually you send a letter out to your client. It goes to the wrong address with the wrong name on it, and no one ever gets anywhere, do they?
Right. Yeah, and that's solvable. That's solvable.
Exactly. Yeah, when client fills their name and address into a portal, and it feeds all the way through the system, and it's job done. You'd like to think they can type their name and address without any mistakes.
That's right. The lawyer is not typing that information in. Instead, they're picking up the phone and having that conversation, or providing that white glove service, because they're not spending time, playing that game. Right?
Filling forms in and just doing data entry. Yeah. They're very, very expensive data entry clerks. Yeah.
It's what we call, there's so much disconnect when we haven't actually connected with the client. We haven't actually gone to the real issue, the legal issues that they've come to us to solve. So the whole kind of first impressions is already, we're halfway through losing the client if there's already all that disconnect, when we haven't actually even come to the core of the issue. What is it that we can help you with? That's why it's critical for us at Tees that we actually get that as smooth as possible, because first impressions, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it actually does matter to a client. So I'm so sorry, I've just jumped in now because I'm so happy that I'm able to jump in. Anyway. So very eager to contribute. So.
Well, one thing we found, which is quite interesting, is we've been onboarding people electronically for about 7 or 8 years now. The problem that you get, because it's so easy for them to put their details in and they upload it and so forth, the expectation is that stuff can be done really quickly and really easily. And then when they get into the actual, as Gemma, as you say, when they get into the transaction and they don't get immediate answers, they go, well, it was very quick to begin with, and now it's really painful. And you go, well, yeah, because we've got to interpret this, we've got to read this. And so managing expectations, what I would advise people is be really careful, because if you get people, if you make it so quick and so fast to get on board, client expectations come totally out of whack. And actually, this is what I've always say to people is like, don't be too quick. Let's not make mistakes, but let's not focus on the speed. I think what the onboarding people are doing is they're missing a trick, and they're again demonstrating that they don't really understand the way lawyers think, which is what we want to stop mistakes. We're not really interested in speed. Speed's great and that's fine, but that's not our number one. Our number one guiding factor is safety. And so trying to get clients to adjust to the fact was, yes, I know we onboarded you in half an hour and that's fantastic. But actually, the fact that we've then got a reply back from the other side and we now have to review that, and that might take a couple of days, we have to think about it, you're going to have to wait, is a very delicate balance to match. And it's I would just urge caution that speed really isn't everything. It's risk. And I think people get that wrong.
Maybe that's what the SRA are doing then. They're trying to help us with that. And they're making the onboarding process so painful and so many questions and documentations that
it's to slow it down.
It's to slow it down a little bit so the clients don't get the wrong expectation.
So tell us a little bit more about the intersection of, because I wanted to introduce you before you spoke officially. You're Director of Risk and Compliance at Teesmore. So tell us a little bit more about the intersection of risk and client experience. For you, what's that? What sort of trade-offs are there, if that's the right word? There.
There's huge trade-offs, Richard, in terms of, as Peter was talking about, we've always got it's almost like walking a tightrope. And from the moment we onboard the client all the way to we send the file for archiving, because there's a huge amount of touch points in which a risks can emerge. So the first one is the client onboarding. There's huge risks in there, and I think quite a lot of the panels have already discussed that. But in addition to that, it's also in the middle is managing those client expectations, because quite a lot of claims and complaints that come through is, as Peter was talking about, well, they say, well, you've onboarded me fairly quickly, but actually you've taken 2 weeks to respond to our queries and or delays. Even at the point of closing a file, they have a lot of risk still coming through in terms of, have we returned the money? Has all the monies gone to the right people? Have we identified the beneficiaries? So the full spectrum of the beginning of the file towards the end, there's risks is everywhere. So we continue to assess the risk at the beginning of the file, in the middle of the file, and towards the end of the file. So it's the whole client experience is riddled with this balancing act of ensuring that we are managing their expectations. We are as speedy as we can be, subject to all the safeguards, but at the same time ensuring that the mistakes are minimized so that we don't have to go through another painful exercise of having to respond to a lot of the claims and complaints, which is generally around the cost and around the time and or delays. Right. So it is the whole gamut is riddled with risks, as we call it, and is relentless, because the expectation is, from our experience, is we are now empowered with tech-enabled solutions, which means we can be faster, but at the same time they still expect that hand-holding, that personalized, almost like the white glove experience. So there's a pressure on both sides, so balancing those and delivering those and actually getting on with the legal work that we are being paid to do is a challenge which is what we say, that's what we call our motto, is we help clients to a better future. That the client experience is at the heart of everything we do. I know it is very easy to say, very hard to do, but one of the tricks that we're trying to do is to make sure that we are very organized internally, so that when we are interacting with the clients, as Jill was talking about, we then have a lot more time, because we don't have to go so much back and forth, having very confusing internal processes, so that the lawyers are actually empowered to have that time to give that personalized service to the client and enable them to feel that their values and they're valued us as a client, and that they continue to trust us as their trusted advisors. So there's a huge, from the beginning to the end, beginning, middle, and end is a continuous risk assessment.
We had a really interesting problem, and I think it's quite apposite actually. So we always used to capture bank details on a bit of paper that the client signed, scanned, and uploaded it. Okay, this client gave us 2 bank details, 2 forms. We obviously paid it on the wrong form. Obviously, it was bound to happen. And what happened was, luckily, it went off into suspense, but it could have gone anywhere. Okay, so what we did is, in order to solve that, we said, right, we're going to get the client to key their own bank details. And what we looked at this is, we looked at it as a way to say the client would go, good, I'm empowered to enter this information myself. So they felt good about it. And what was really interesting is the way we did it is we just put a little red dot on our portal, and within a week, 500 clients had put their bank details in. That's all we did, which was amazing. And they were felt empowered as ever. Of course, from our perspective, we went, fantastic. That's not a problem for us anymore because you've done it. So what we did was we actually made what was actually a risk issue into a client service issue. And that was really interesting. And we do this more and more, whereby, so for example, our big area of concern is, the number one area for claims is where lawyers don't follow clients' instructions. Clients might raise inquiries and the lawyers don't pass them on. So we're like, how do we solve this risk issue? So what we did is we made that onto their portal. So we said to the clients, if you've got questions, put it on there. And we also put our inquiries on there as well, so the client could see it all. Now, the reason we did this was all about risk. All we wanted to do was demonstrate to the client, look, this is what we've done. The clients absolutely love it. And also what it did do is when we were selling, for example, when we get these questions, clients would always say, oh, you're just message takers, you're not actually doing anything. And we're like, well, it's your house, but okay, we get that. So then what we did was we said, okay, fine, we'll put those inquiries onto the portal. So then the clients would answer them all themselves. And again, around the service delivery issue, what that was the clients could see how many ridiculous questions we get. Okay, and so know the extent of what we're doing, but also they were empowered to give the answers. The good news for us is we had evidence from the client of their answers that we could then use. And so what you can do is you can actually combine risk mitigation with improved service delivery. And all you've got to do is just find a way to do that creatively. So the client goes, that's really good, I'm much more involved. And as lawyers, we just sit there and go, thank you very much, client.
Yes, seamless.
Do you have any pushback from clients about, well, I'm doing all your work for you?
Oh, they always say that anyway, so we would end there. I mean, they say that anyway, seriously, honestly. Right. I mean, this stuff, oh, I've done all the work, but you haven't. No, it's been amazingly positive. We just did it because we thought, this was about 3 years ago, and we just thought, let's just see what happens. We didn't make an announcement, we didn't tell them it was new, because we realized that every client that was coming to us, it was their first experience of us. Because I said, oh, we've got to tell people. And I'm like, well, no, because they don't know any better. Right? So we just said, put it out there. It's been, in all seriousness, it's a game changer for the lawyers here. Because A, they haven't got to rekey anything. B, eliminate the risk of translation errors. I mean, it eliminates, gone overnight. But the most important thing is the clients can see the extent. So when we say, oh, we've got a freehold sale and we've just got 80 inquiries in, so poor us sort of thing, the client then sees it all and goes, and actually they push back. They go, oh, okay, fine, that's great. I'll leave you to get on with it. It's really good because transparency is great as long as you can control it.
But yeah, transparency is great as long as you're doing everything you should be doing and exactly. Not making mistakes and all the rest of it. Yeah, no, exactly. I completely agree. Yeah. That's
it's almost like
why people hide things, isn't it? No, it's interesting.
It does work.
I like the red dot thing because we are all getting trained to follow the red dots.
We do. It's one of our interview questions. We always say to prospective lawyers, how many unread messages have you got in your inbox? We test the OCD level of our lawyers. We want it to be really high.
There's lots more that I wanted to get into, but we do have a couple of questions from people watching. So I feel like at this point, I should put those to you. The first is, are people using, I think this is you people, are you using or purchasing known systems, portals, onboarding, tech, etc., or are you creating your own? Gemma, maybe I'll start with you.
So what was the question? Are you creating your own?
Are you buying systems out there in the market when it comes to the things that we've been talking about, onboarding, for example, or portal technology, or does Tees invest in creating its own?
We are creating our own portals. So we have a new project management team. We have a legal project manager recently, and we have this project called Project Breeze, which is specifically to make sure that we can move clients to a portal. We're still not there yet. We're probably about 60%. And we've hired internal developers to make sure that, because the problem sometimes with having too many different systems is this system doesn't work with the current system. And before we know it, there's another source of disconnect, there's another source of risks where the systems just don't talk to each other. So we're creating it in-house here at Tees. In my previous role, we purchased it from a different source, but from my experience, it's now better. I know there's a lot more investment involved, and there's a time lag because we've had to hire 2 extra developers to make sure that we pull everything together, all the ID, the biometrics, they come in all at once rather than it. I'm not an IT expert, but apparently there's some problems with too much integrations. So we are trying to curate it in-house. I know that there are potentially some other products out there, but that's been a strategic decision for us because it lessens the risks of another problem issue.
Okay, thanks, Gemma. Peter, I assume from what you said before, you create your own, do you?
Yeah, we had to. I mean, we do our own development because it does give us an edge. So we built our own, but we built it to address the security issue. But yeah, we have built our own. There's a disappointing set of choices out there for portals. There's 3 basically portals out there that are standalone. Take up is not as high as it should be. They're okay, but I can see people having issues. And when I speak to people, Gemma, you're right. Integration has always been the issue.
Yeah, we think about that at NetDocuments a lot, and with our portal solution, right? Like having it be seamless in terms of integrations with the other technology that's required to deliver client service is really important. But one of the key things that I think a lot of our clients like about collab spaces is that it sits on top of the platform, so it inherits all the security, right? And I think that's one of the tricks with those standalone collab spaces or standalone portals, right? Being able to make sure that it has that level of security while maintaining a certain level of integration with all of those technologies, that can be a real trick. But when it does sit on a single platform that inherits security, that I think eliminates that risk, which is a good thing.
And then the other question we've had, these are both from anonymous attendees. Rather more specifically, what about generative AI's capabilities to generate deep fakes? And for example, to fool Teams or Zoom, I hope this isn't something that's actually happened, Teams or Zoom confirmation of what a client looks like or who they say they are. Is that on the risk radar, that idea, Gemma? I suppose in the context of onboarding, do you know that the person is who they say they are?
Oh, well, that's a tricky one. We do. I mean, we have.
Okay to say I don't know.
Yes, we have a spectrum of different products that we try and use. So when we've got I mean, just today, in fact, this morning, we had a high-risk client from an overseas country, and so the fee earner actually said, I'm just not comfortable just doing Teams. So we've added them to the third platform to add those additional checks. So there is now that biometric data, which is similar to the one where you can, when you go to the airport, but we don't use it all the time because it's quite expensive, but it actually checks that it carries out the liveness check. It checks that they are who they say they are in terms of the documents that it's very much like what you have to go through in order to go to the airport. So, I mean, that's the closest we can get. I'm not aware of anything else. I'd be happy to learn from other panelists or anyone within the audience to see if there's anything else we can do apart from having those extra layers.
That's what we're looking at as well, is the biometrics. Because I mean, I'd like to think we've not had any deep fakes over Team or Zoom, but but yeah, we need to bring in the biometric scanning, because as far as I'm aware, you can't fake that. That's what it is there for.
Yeah.
And it just gives you that extra security. I mean, you can, do everything you can possibly think of. You don't have to do one or the other. You don't have to do biometrics or a team call. You could do both.
Yeah.
I mean, you could go all the way to actually meeting a client face to face, God forbid.
It's a difficult one. It is a difficult one though, and we spend a lot of time looking at risk. And what we do, our rule is we say, well, look, if the lenders are happy, if the regulators are happy, and then the insurers are happy, then we're happy, because there's only so far you can go.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like source of wealth. We look at this every now and again. We look at it. We go, "Oh, should we make it easy?" And we're like, we're just going to have to use our judgment on this. And as long as you can show reasonable judgment, and I think we can see shadows everywhere. ID is one of those. We look back. I mean, we've moved 30,000 people over the last 10 years. Are they all 100% squeaky clean? Well, we think so. We caught 2 money launderers, which was cool, but those are the ones we caught. So you don't know, but I think you have to be careful. One of our problems that we have, or one of our concerns, is you have a lot of these apps and biometrics and stuff. I always go, that's great, but what about the people that don't have it? And then my argument always falls down to the point of, well, if I've got 30% that can't use it, am I going to go to the hassle of 70% getting people to install that app? We've never done this, because I've always said, it's going to be so difficult for the other 30%. And that's why I always say to, the guys that like third, fourth, stuff like that, what do I do with those? And they go, oh, well, that's tricky. And I'm like, well, I need to have a universal solution. What we found seems to work. They take a photo, they upload the passport to our portal. We know where they've come from. We know it's the lowest common denominator, but it seems to work. But you're right. I mean, it is very difficult to know where it stops. And that's one of the challenges we have. Where do you stop?
I think that's the key, is what you say, isn't it? It's about applying, a bit of common sense and using your judgment. As you say, Gemma, you had a client this morning that your lawyer was uncomfortable, and they used their judgment, so you applied some extra software to make yourselves comfortable that client is legitimate. That's the key, isn't it? It's not one solution for everybody. It's going to be, there's your main solution, but sometimes you have to do extra, sometimes you'll do a bit less.
And it's documenting why we've decided in that. So we apply the risk-based approach with a lot of common sense induced into it, because it is a judgment call. But what I've been driving in all the teams is document that. It's a little bit like a maths problem, isn't it? Even if you get to the wrong answer, but at least if you show you're working out, actually, then hopefully, if in the unlikely event that you have a visit or a regulatory issue, then you can say, well, these are the reasons why we've decided to do it this way. So it's protecting the fear, protecting the firm from it, rather than just, okay, let's do it that way. But we've got to document it, even if it's just to confirm in an email to say, according to the risk and compliance, blah, 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 this is what we've decided in accordance with the circumstances that we found ourselves in. So at least there is some justification, and it's a risk-based approach, because we can't legislate for every single possibility. There's a huge gamut of different types of transactions, different types of very specialized needs from different clients. So it's tricky.
And that's a good point. I want to, well, first of all, to say that was an anonymous question, but feel free to submit comments as well if you want, or your own solutions as well as ask questions. But I also just wanted to pick up on that and zoom out one more time, because one of the things that's come through is, to me anyway, is we're talking about improving the client experience, but that could very much mean different things to different types of clients depending who you're dealing with. Are we talking about doing something in the time it takes to watch a TikTok video, or are we talking about spending hours on the phone with someone? They might want either of those things. So do you have to decide where you play in this sort of technology or white glove sort of service space, or can you do both? And what does that look like? Making decisions around that.
I think you have to do both, don't you? Otherwise, you're kind of eliminating some of your client base, because you don't deal with the way that they want you to deal with things. So you've got to be able to do both to a certain extent. You may well specialize in one more than another. But I think you have to have the ability to communicate and deal with your client in the way that your client wants you to.
Right. Yeah.
They're the client at the end of the day. They dictate to us, don't they? What they want goes.
Is that right? Is that right? They do.
And what we do is we try and organize ourselves internally so that we are able to, because there are some clients who says, oh, for goodness sake, just get on with it. I'm happy with that. You know, whereas there are some clients who are like, really wants to go, you know, go through, dot all the T, you know, cross all the dots, and, you know, everything in a very kind of really pedantic way. But if we don't have that internal efficiency, we won't have that choice. So I agree with Richard, we're going to have to proceed in the way that how do they want us to help them? If they want a lot of email, we go through a lot of email. They want a lot of face-to-face phone calls, they want a portal, but it's we can't deliver them that choice if we are having so many problems internally within our processes itself. So if they want a white gloves, provided they're happy to pay, we'd be glad to do so.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, and oftentimes you don't need, you know, multiple types of technology to serve in both of those ways, right? Like one solution, you know, one stone, two birds. Is that the right saying? I'm not quite sure, but essentially, if you're
with one stone.
Yeah, right. And if you're like, take semantic search for an example, right? So you have the clients who just want an answer. They want to log into a portal. They don't want to sift through documents. They have a question. They just want to ask that question and get an answer. Semantic search is a really great technology for that kind of rapid answer solution, because it will leverage the documents that you've already decided are, you know, that you want to be transparent about, and provide that information. And it will, you know, pull that into a prompt and be able to provide kind of semantic answer back to that client. At the same time, if it's white glove service that you're after, semantic search can allow a lawyer to find that answer quickly and be able to spend more time having that discussion with the client, right? So it depends on the way you want to leverage and apply the technology, but the technology itself can really help you serve that broad spectrum of needs.
I mean, that's the difference between answering the question that your client just asked you on the phone immediately because you've done a quick search and found the answer, or having to say, let me find out and I'll get back to you.
That's right. That's the trick. Yeah.
I think it's interesting. There's no value of the service of the product that you're selling that doesn't benefit from decent processes and decent technology. So if we're buying at 3 million or buying at 300,000, both of them benefit from the same level. The person buying at 3 million doesn't necessarily have higher expectations than the person buying at 300. In fact, actually, in our experience, the reverse is true. Where we're finding it's the at the lower end of the market where we get the most pressure and the most demanding clients, you know, and it's just the middle bit that's the really tricky bit. But I think you can apply. So we have, you know, we have high net worth individuals that use us. They'll buy at 2-3 million, and that's great. And they're fine. They want a portal. They don't want to speak to us, and that's great. You'll get other people that say, no, everything must go in the post. And we're like, well, that's quite annoying, but we'll do it. And so we do it. But it's interestingly, it's not as price driven as you would think. There is this theory that high net worth individuals want to come and sit in your office and they want to go through and they want you to report to them in person. Yeah. It's not that at all. In fact, most often it's the other way around. Yeah.
Yeah. What we find is they're more time poor as well. So they just want it quick. Yeah. Sometimes they don't even want to look through it. And we say, well, you've got to confirm that those instructions are actually correct, because otherwise, you know, that's when the compliance and the risk mitigation point comes in.
I'm just going to squeeze in a final question. This is from Wayne Lord. Clients can quite often wish to collaborate using WhatsApp, Wayne finds. Whether we like it or not, it's the easiest way they can share information and communicate, and no legal portal or tool seems to be able to compete with it. What's your take on that, Tigers? Richard, WhatsApp?
WhatsApp is to be used for general chatter only, and not talk about the case, because it's one of the most insecure methods of communication out there, which is probably why no legal systems integrate with it, because the recommendation is you don't use it.
Right.
So no, we push back to our lawyers and trying to say, you know, chatter with your clients, you know, use it to meet up with them, go for coffee, etc., but don't talk about cases on it. If it does drift into that, then you need to shift to a different communication method.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're on the cusp of that evolution, aren't we? Right? Like, I remember hearing this a little bit in the introduction of email, right? Where it was like, oh, we used to have that communication face to face, and now it's happening in email. What do we do? How do we store that message? And there had to be integration in with your document management system, et cetera. And we're hearing the exact same thing. It's no longer email, that conversation's happening in Microsoft Teams or WhatsApp. And so being able to capture that conversation, if and when it does happen, right, Richard, is really important. So I think, at least from a technology perspective, and NetDocuments in particular, looking for ways to integrate so that there's a kind of a shared security and experience of that document management system in the places that lawyers and clients are communicating. I think it may be like a don't use it today, but we do need to think about it as service providers and how we're going to support that if that client expectation just continues.
What's the alternative going to be? Yeah.
I mean, heaven forbid, heaven forbid if we ever were forced into using WhatsApp, because the expectation is so fast. We put a message, when someone sends a message to the portal, we always go, thank you for that. We won't come back to you immediately. Because we were saying, because people would send a message, because we're like, it's not WhatsApp. We always say it's not WhatsApp. But as I say, heaven help us if lawyers are expected to correspond over WhatsApp. That's all I'll say. But it probably is, Jill, you're right. It's coming, and God,
I take it your portal doesn't have the little tick box, the ticks to say that it's been read then.
It does from our side, but not from their side.
Oh, yeah, good. Yeah, good. Otherwise they'll want the answer immediately, won't they?
Oh, yeah.
Somebody, possibly the same person who wanted to know about Teams and Zoom deepfakes says it's also a breach of WhatsApp's T's and C's to use it for business purposes.
Oh, cool.
Put that past the
That's what we like to hear.
Okay, I think we're at time. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and in particular to my Tigers for this session. I found that a really fascinating conversation, lots of ideas thrown around, and we won't say that we came up with definite solutions, but definitely ideas to consider in the mix. So thank you again to Peter Ambrose, who is an owner and MD at the partnership, to Richard Price, Finance and IT Manager at Maurice Turnor Gardner, and Gemma Garren, Director of Risk and Compliance at Teaslaw, and of course Jill Schornack, VP of Product at our partner NetDocuments. There's a fourth Tiger team in the autumn, so don't miss that. Watch out for the dates soon to be announced, and thanks very much.